So let's discuss functions and object method calls in Python. Now when we create a function or call a function, oftentimes we're going to have these brackets, and these brackets will take either positional or keyword arguments. Let's talk about that for a moment. All right, so here's how you define a function. We're saying def. That's the Python function keyword. We're naming this function subtract nums or subbed nums. And we're putting two arguments, two parameters in here, arg1 and arg2. Now once we pass those parameters in here, what the function is going to do is subtract arg2 from arg1, and then it's going to return that to us. Now down here, here's the function call. So for arg1 we're going to pass a 7, and for arg2 we're going to pass a 2 in there. 7 minus 2 should be, well, should be 5. Now we haven't just called the function, we actually put the results that come back into a variable called results, and then we call the results. We actually ask Jupyter to output that result. So these are positional arguments because they're controlled by what position that we put these numbers into. So for example, if we put a 2 here instead of its 7 and put a 7 here instead of a 2, and we run this again, we're going to get a -5 instead of a +5. Alright, so this is 2 minus 7 instead of 7 minus 2. Those are positional arguments. What are keyword arguments? Well, we could actually go in here and say arg1 equals 7, arg1 is equal to 7, and arg2 is equal to 2. And this should, whoops, I got 22. This should override our positions because we're using keywords. Yeah, we're back to +5 again. So you can use either positional or keyword arguments in your function. But what we have done here is we've created an integer variable type. This is an integer object. And what we want to do is talk about also maybe another object type called a string. And we can create that down here where we say this string equals hello. What we want to do in here is check the different available methods. The methods that are available for an integer type and methods that are available for a string type. And if you recall, up in tab completion, we can just do that simply by calling result. I'm just going to type RE and hit tab, and I should find result in there. And then to find what methods are available, I can just hit dot and tab. And this is going to tell me what methods are available. So now when we ran that, we should have gotten this, we should have populated this string variable too. So let's check what methods are available on a string object as opposed to what's available on an integer object. str, hit tab, and there's my string1 variable. Dot, tab, and it tells me I've got all these. Well, there's a lot more available functions here than there was in for an int, isn't there? Let's try this upper method and see what that does. We'll put our two brackets at the end, control enter. Alright, so what upper does is it will take the text of a string variable and convert it to uppercase. Alright, so now what if you're not sure what variable type you're dealing with? Do you have an int, or do you have a string, or another variable type is a float variable type? Well, we can just use the type method to check what type it is. Control enter tells us that the results variable that we got from up here is actually as an integer, and here control enter, the string1 variable is actually a string, and right here we're going to create a float variable, a float type object. What that is it's just a number with the decimal, right? This has got a decimal in it. It's a float rather than an int. Okay, so those are variable types. There's another variable type that's common. It's a true or false. It's called a Boolean. It's a binary type. There's only two types to it. But the final thing we want to cover in this video here is that we really can't like add together an int and a string. So we've created a string variable here with these quotations, and what we want to try to do is add these two together. All right, so let me uncomment this. So this will throw an error because we're trying to add a string together with int. Let me run this. Okay, it's error. It can only concatenate a string to a string, not an int. Anyway, it threw an error because they're different types. So what we could do is change this string variable. We could change that into an int, and that's quite easy. All we do is just say int and then put compute inside there. Alright, so we're changing compute, and then we're running that again, and what we get is 10. Okay, because 5 plus 5 is 10. Alright, that should wrap up this video.